very good afternoon to all of you, our cherished viewers of Hot Issues on TV3, and welcome to another exciting edition of your program. So, the President Danko Akufo-Addo has named 36 ministers so far, and he says his major priority would be the management of the Ghanaian economy. But what are the challenges facing the Ghanaian economy? Are those the challenges that the NPP is telling us, or that which the NDC is telling us? This afternoon, we want to look at the challenges facing the Ghanaian economy, not the challenges facing the Ghanaian economy as told us by the politicians, but the challenges facing the economy as told us by industry players and watchers, the people who know it when it comes to Ghana's economy. I am Winston Amoa, and this is Hot Issues. My guest for this afternoon is the CEO of Dayless Finance, Ken Thompson. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining.
How are you?
I'm fine, and a happy new year to you.
Happy new year to you too. You're looking well.
You're looking well too. Maybe I'm learning from you. But what's the major challenge facing the Ghanaian economy?
You see, I have to roll back a few years. Remember, I mean, when I walked into the studio, I remember one of your cameramen came to me and said, Mr. Thompson, we haven't seen you for a long time. Last year you came here, you said economy, economy, economy. The productive sector of this economy is dead. And when I say the productive sector, the sector that produces goods and services is dead.
The sector that produces goods and services?
Is dead. I mean, there are companies that...
How did it die?
Well, there's no business. I mean, the biggest player in the economy is the government. The government had no money to spend, so there's no business.
The government says this, I mean, whenever they read the budget, they tell the services sector contributes so much towards the country's GDP.
I'll come to that.
Okay.
But you see, when you look at our 2015 budget, we spend, if we earn 1,000 cedis, we spend 400 cedis on emoluments, we spend 300 cedis on paying interest on our debt, so there's no money left for anything else.
There's 300 cedis left.
Yeah, well,
yeah, of course.
Assuming you earn 1,000 cedis, you spend 400 cedis on your house helps, whoever it is, 400 cedis on your house helps, 300 cedis on your debt. You haven't paid school fees, you haven't paid your move for petrol, you haven't paid rent, you haven't paid medical, extra. But we always got to see our economy in that way, and that's the situation which we're in. So, really, there's not much wiggle room. We don't have money to do anything else. And we've got to find a way to revive the economy. We've got to find a way to revive the economy. That's the issue. But when you go back again to what the election and what happened and NPP coming to power, NPP has been elected on a wave of optimism. I personally don't think that people necessarily voted for NPP because of all the promises they made. I think that people wanted a change. And I also know that...
You're suggesting the NPP didn't win the elections based on their promises?
Not necessarily. I can't say it was 50% promises, 50% change.
What can you say then?
I can say maybe it was 70% change and 30% promises from where I sit.
So an indication that Ghanaians would not hold the NPP accountable for those promises they made?
No, I'm coming to that. Yeah. Because they wanted somebody who they thought could make this country more prosperous, to make them prosperous. So now we have the NPP in power, and they're doing some, I'm sure they're checking the books. When they finish the check, the situation will be much, much worse than they thought it was. So in 2015, we're spending 70% of our income on two line items. I can guarantee you, I don't know for a fact, but I can guarantee you that it will be more than 70%.
What do you know that you think that makes you believe that the situation will be worse than they thought?
The borrowing continued in 2016. The public expenditure continued in 2016. So we're still earning, assuming we're still earning 1,000 cedis, we'll be much more, we'll be spending more than 700 cedis on two line items. In any case, even if it's still 70%, the NPP now has got to manage the expectations of the people. We've got to have a conversation, and I'm expecting them to do a few things over the next, say, 100 days or so.
We'll look at the few things that they have to do, but as it stands now, if I were to ask you, you've told me that the productive sectors are dead. What else is facing this economy? What other challenges are we going through?
Corruption. Ghana is an incredible country. You can see it, you can smell it, you can feel it, but they say you have no evidence, so there's no corruption. Corruption has taken this country to the dark ages, and people are dying. Our schools have no books, teachers are poorly paid, our people live in filth. Corruption. And corruption happens in two ways, well, different ways. But first, because of corruption, we take projects to the wrong areas. Because the projects are, where we take them are politically motivated.
Which projects we're taking to the wrong areas?
I don't want to go specifics, but we take projects to, there's so many projects in this country that are taken to the wrong. What's the most? Give me one. I'll give you one. I'll give you, say, the Commander Sugar Factory. We put in a place where there's no sugar, where we don't grow sugar cane.
They grow sugar cane around that area.
Yeah. When was the last time I went to Commander? How much sugar cane to feed the factory?
So there isn't much sugar cane to feed the factory.
Exactly. But if I was as a private sector person, would you put your money in a sugar factory in Commander? Let's move on.
So that's a misplaced priority.
Of course it's a misplaced priority. Then also, because of corruption, if, for example, a project costs 100, only 10 goes to the project. So 90 CDs, 90% is frittered away by corruption. But when you look at corruption, that's what I'm saying. You can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it, but we say there's no corruption. We all know of people that go into politics and overnight they are successful.
Mr. Thompson, these are statements that normally people make. Okay, we know. But we need to know those people first. I can just sit down and say, oh, I know somebody who just went into politics, but who went into politics and became rich overnight?
I don't have any evidence. But,
exactly.
But other people...
So what you don't have evidence about, you don't say.
No. I can see it. I can smell it. I can feel it, but I don't have any evidence.
You must prove the things you say.
Well, there are people that are there whose job it is to prove those things. So if my neighbor goes into politics and overnight he becomes rich, somebody should be saying, how did you make all that money? That's normal. Somebody overnight became rich. That's what we can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it, but there's no evidence. So, but the MPP must come out with a clear strategy to deal with corruption. And in the same way you're asking me, but Mr. Thompson, you can't say that. I'm saying it. I can see it, I can smell it, I can feel it.
Except that you can't
I can't prove it. I can see the roads.
If you can't prove it, don't say it.
Please, no. I'm not a citizen. I'm not a spectator. I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen of this country.
Okay.
I see the roads that are tarred, and within 2 days they're full of potholes. Does it make sense to you?
What must the NPP do right?
So they've got to deal with corruption, and they've got to come out with a clear plan as to how they're going to deal with corruption. They've also got to come out with a clear plan as to how they're going to use agriculture to transform this country and improve the lives of the people. One thing that really irritates me is when people complain, and we all complain, we're not paid enough, the money's not enough, we're suffering, they throw statistics at us. GDP is 8%.
That's an indication of how well your economy is doing, isn't it?
We
you
don't
finance,
care.
Statistics.
Ken Thompson, I don't care, and Ghanaians don't care. Two things. Tell us how many jobs you are creating in the private sector, and tell us how real incomes are growing. So that my 25-year-old nephew, who stayed with me since he was a child, and I've paid for his nursery, primary school, secondary school, university, and hasn't got a job, has a job, they pay him, whether it's 500 cedis, he can rent a place to live, he has money for transport, can pay his bills, he can probably get married, he can afford 3 meals. That's all we're interested in. We are not interested in 10, we are not interested in whatever they call Osajivu coming, we are not interested in economy on sound footing. We want to feel it in our pocket. But in feeling it in your pocket, there are indicators that would show that you're feeling it. So, for instance, you need to know, the rate at which you're losing, your money is losing value. You are into finance. I don't care.
When someone gives you the money, you let the person know how well, how your money is losing value. So inflation is important.
As a Ghanaian, I don't care.
As a financial person, would you care?
As a financial person, I care because I'm managing people's monies. Okay, yes. But as a Ghanaian, when I'm paid my salary, I don't care whether GDP is 25%. I really don't care. I don't care whether inflation is 2%. All I care about is the money enough for me to survive?
But an inflation of 2% would mean that the rate of increase of goods and services is relatively low, and so you feel it in your pocket.
I don't care. Don't tell me it's 2%. Make sure I can feel it in my pocket. My grandmother doesn't care. My grandmother doesn't care whether GDP is 25%. My grandmother doesn't care whether gas will come on stream next year. My grandmother cares that his children, his nephew, have jobs, and they can feel the effects on their real income.
It's not a very simplistic analysis of
But
the
of
issue.
course it's simple. I mean, what else? I mean, I don't care. We have people, I mean, do you think my staff come to me and worry about how they're going to be paid? It's my responsibility. They don't care how I do it. I'm the boss. Sort it out, pay us. In the US, what's the first figure they announce all the time?
Tell me.
Jobs. How many jobs have been created? That's what people care about. They don't care. You think President Obama come and say, well, GDP has gone up by 7%. Do they care? They don't care.
So you're suggesting the NDC didn't manage the economy well?
What I'm saying is that the product in 2016, I've said publicly that the economy of Ghana is broken. The productive sectors of this country are broken. They're dead. Nothing's happening. You see, and we find ourselves in a situation where we have millions of people, teeming mass, millions, that don't have jobs. Real incomes are next to nothing. And we've got to find a way to correct it. And I've said so many times that the only way is agriculture, agriculture, agriculture.
What about agriculture?
Sector. Agriculture, we've got to take food production seriously. For example, the people, if you take even yam and cassava, Ghana is the largest exporter of yams, but we don't manage the process properly. The farmers don't have access to seeds, they don't have access to fertilizer, they don't have access to extension services. Same thing, cassava. There's so many things we could do. And then everybody along the value chain, including you and I, benefits. The processing, they put that transport, they put that into shipping, they put that right legal agreements. Me, Ken Thompson, I buy and sell money. I can sell money to someone like you because you're working, because you're in any more money and your real income makes sense. But apart from agriculture, there's nothing else we can do to create jobs for our people in the short to medium term. There's nothing. And you see,
there is nothing we can do to
what are we going to do? Are we going to start manufacturing cars? Are you going to make cars or manufacture TV programs or manufacture pens? Agriculture, agriculture, agriculture. And the frustrating thing about this is something we have known about for years. What's wrong with us? It's agriculture, agriculture, agriculture. Private sector, private sector, private sector. Full stop. That's all we have to do. So corruption, agriculture, then the government must win the trust of the people and be transparent. It must win the trust of the people and be transparent.
What must the government do to win the trust of the people?
Okay, first thing, for example, this right to information bill, where I should be able to go and ask for information from a government ministry and they give to me, it must be passed. The government must also manage its expenditure and how it conducts itself. You go on an airplane and you see Ghanaian officials in business class and the people that they're asking money from are in economy. We can't afford it. We travel, we live in some of the most expensive hotels. Every minister and their sidekicks, they have bodyguards. If they cough, they are flown away to South Africa or somewhere else. No, we've got to manage it because we have to gain the trust of the people and they must be transparent. It's our money. It's our money. So, and unless the MPP government gets these things in place, economically it will fail if it does not focus on agriculture, 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 private sector, private sector, private sector. Economically, it will fail.
Finance. So, what about the private sector would propel this country forward?
You see, let's start with, you have government and you have private sector. Everything the government has done in this country has failed. Agriculture, farming, shipping, airlines, telecoms, it's failed. The private sector, when we have a stake, when you have a stake in something you're doing, that is when you wake up in the morning to go to work. But the government, when they throw the money away, what happens to them? So the engine of growth, the best allocator of resources is the private sector. And the same way they've incentivized the private sector to open boutiques and shops and to do government contracts. The same way they should incentivize us to go into agriculture and the other related industries. The government can do it. I mean, I have a good example. You know, remember in 2000 when the presidential special initiatives came about, they all failed. But one of the things they did was set up a cassava processing factory in Kaswa. Probably cost them, I don't know, maybe $10 million or $5 million, even $1 million. The factory is collapsed. Which private sector person will put money in such a factory and allow it to collapse?
It's been revamped now.
Revamped?
Yes.
After how many years? 16 years.
Well, that factory was, the initiative started in 2003, the special initiatives, when Alan Tremantin came back to become, Trades and Industry Minister and Presidential Special Initiatives. Then, by the time the NPP left office, the Ayensu Start factory had collapsed. I think there's been a public-private partnership now to bring it back. So it's working now.
Oh, so private sector has gone in now. Okay, thank God for that. But no private sector person has put in his money and allowed it to collapse. In any case, the private sector is the best allocator of resources. But what we forget is that anytime a public sector organization fails, it adds to our debt, and that's what we're suffering for. Anytime. So all the debts of all the ship, Black Star Line, I don't know, state hotels, state farms, all adds to Ghana's debt. The engine of growth of this country is the private sector. So they have to incentivize the private sector to go into the productive sectors to create jobs for the people.
How do they incentivize them?
You can do it so many ways. If, for example, you decided to go, well, I'm saying we should go into agric, and agric is the only solution. Provide seeds, provide tax breaks, provide infrastructure, provide farmer support, provide pack houses. People will put their money there. I mean, why do people go into government contracts? Because they know they can load it and make their money. But why people don't go into agriculture? Because all these things are not available. I mean, it's so simple. I'll give you another example. You know, when cocoa came to this country, and I learned this, I left university in 1984. And the university was closed for a year, so I should have finished, but I went to university in 81. First year economics, economics lecture, I did admin, so, first year economics, we did economics. And this was one of the things they was telling us, we were talking about incentives to the private sector. When cocoa came to this country, it's not indigenous to Ghana, but everybody embraced it. I mean, cocoa at that time took probably 5-6 years to mature. Everybody embraced it. Those that are working in offices, private sector people, teachers, everybody embraced it. Why? Because there was an incentive for them to plant cocoa. Give people an incentive to go there, and they'll do it. What are we going to do? Give them incentive to open barber shops? It's incentives. It's as simple as that. The same way we incentivize people to do government contracts, the same way we incentivize people to open small shops. And by the way, if you travel throughout the country, and I've traveled through most of this country because we have offices throughout the country, all I see are small shops selling Chinese products and young men and women sitting about with nothing to do. The same way we've incentivized people to do nothing, the same way we incentivize people to open these shops, let's incentivize people to go into agric. And I can assure you, if the finance is in place, if there's access to farmer support services, if there's improved seeding, if the marketing is right, I mean, if the production is standardized, I will go into agriculture. Why wouldn't I go into? I mean, I had a pineapple farm, after
and what happened to it?
After 1 year, I realized that, man, Ken Thompson, you're in the wrong business. It was so hard.
How hard was it?
So hard. First, the planting was hard. The inputs were expensive. There was nobody to talk to. The marketing was, they'll say, okay, today we are coming to force. I don't know, they come and put some, then so we changed our mind. It was shamble.
You didn't do any studies before you went into it?
You can do as much, I'm an accountant, and I always say that I can make a spreadsheet say anything. But one thing I know is that what will happen is different. You can do any amount of studies you like, but what actually happens is completely different, But anyway, I did all the studies, but I ran away. And I have so many friends that went to farming and ran away because it was just so painful. It was easier for them to go to the ministries, to get some contract to build gutters, than to go and farm. The same way we've created incentives for people to do that, create incentives for people to go into agric, but because that is the only sector now in the short to medium term that can transform the fortunes of this country. And by the way, there's nothing we will do that's not been done before. If we think we don't have the expertise, just walk across the border to Ivory Coast. Say, how do you do it? Copy, paste. How difficult is copying and pasting? Go to Ivory Coast. They have targets. They have farmers have support. They have people in finance. They have extension services. The infrastructure is there. The marketing, the managing of the produce until it gets to the market. How complicated is that? How complicated is that? And we've known that since the year dot. What's our problem? All I'm interested in, and I keep on saying that, I don't want to know about inflation. I don't want to know about GDP growth. Okay. I don't want to know about 10 coming. All I want is jobs, my nephew is employed, and that my real income rises. That's all.
What thing did the NDC do right that you'd want the NPP to continue doing when it comes to management of the economy?
What did NDC do right? For a man that said the economy was broken, that's a hard one. What did they do right? I remember they said something about smart borrowing. I don't know about it, but that sounded right. NDC. That's a hard one.
You don't remember anything you'd want the NPP to continue doing by way of the management of the economy?
I've got to think, and that's a problem. I can't say it in English, but once I've got to think, that's a problem. But I've said publicly, in 2015, we're heading for a crash. And it was a big forum. It was reported. I've said 2016 was broken. But still, amongst the ashes, maybe there's something that I'm missing. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I have to think.
The president said they had been able to manage the economy very well. I mean, he talked about the achievements, the fact that they've been able to, get the economy to a sound foundation, a very strong foundation, and was ready to take off this year, 2017.
I don't care. What I know is that there are no jobs, and my real income is next to nothing. I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. I don't care. I really don't care. I'm not.
But the good things you want to see would be seen once we get into, once you have these statistics to back them. Of course, once you feel them, also there should be statistics to show you that you're feeling them.
Oh, you don't need to. I don't need statistics. When you want to know whether real incomes are rising, ask your cameraman. You don't need to go beyond the studio. Where do you need to go? What statistics? I don't want to know statistics. Ask your cameraman. Ask your house help. Ask your wife. Actually, your wife goes to the market. Ask your wife. I mean, I don't need statistics to tell me that.
So let's get to the team to manage the economy now. Yes, the NPP is coming to office. They are, they've set in place their team now. You know Ken Oforiatta?
Yes.
He's worked in that industry that you are in. Is he the man for the job?
Well, at least on paper, there's no reason why Ken should fail. I mean, he's well educated. He has experience. He's built a business from the back of a postage stamp. He's built a business. He has evidence to show what he's achieved. I don't think Ken is as rich as Dangote, but I don't think even if it didn't work, he'd have to go to he'd be going to the NHIS for his medication. So there's really no reason why Ken should fail. And I think, and what I've said is that I'm saying to Ken is, Ken, this is your opportunity to write your name in the history books of this country. We can do it. And if we lose this opportunity, it may never come back. And we've got to remember that unless we secure the future of our children, this country will never be secure. But Ken has an opportunity to write his name in the history books because the things that he wants to do, they have been done. There's nothing that we want to do in this country that's not been done before. And that's the one thing we've got to get, we've got to start thinking. There's nothing we're going to do that's not been done before. What? Look at it. That's how we did it. It worked. Come and do it. It didn't work. Tweak it. Move on. But from us, it's Ken. I mean, if Ken said he wouldn't do it, we'll probably have to start looking in the barrel and start scraping the bottom because there are probably other competent people. But there's absolutely no reason why Ken should not be able to do it. I mean, it's private sector. He's built a business. He has staff. He understands the issues.
Well, you just told me that, what is on a spreadsheet is different from the reality.
Of course.
So there's a difference in, being very educated. There's a difference also in building a private entity and coming over to, the public sector?
Okay, first, there's been a lot of, I've heard some discussions on whether, because he's private sector, whether he can handle the public sector. But I'd like to remind people that maybe we have not, we've sort of, well, not maybe, but the reforms of our public sector have sort of slowed down. But the public sector in most countries are now operating like a private sector. You have targets, you have strategy, you have plans, you have targets, you have appraisals. The principles are the same. So for me, really, it's a red herring. It's a red herring. In any case, the best person to do it is a private sector person. He understands risk. Ken Ofori-Atta understands what risk is. He understands what it is like to lose money. It's not somebody in a government office who pushes paper and says, sees 10 billion on paper and puts another 20 billion here and says, put 20 billion here and it's lost and he doesn't know what it means. He understands risk. He understands what it means to lose money. He understands failure. And by the way, unless you have failed, you can never become leader. And I'm sure he's failed so many times. That's the kind of people we need to manage this country. We don't need some technocrat who doesn't understand what it means to lose money. I'm not dissing technocrats, but I'm saying that everybody has their place. But we in the private sector, we understand risk. We understand risk. Yes. So
Tekpe didn't understand risk?
Well, he said he was an accountant, was a taxman, so that's all I can say. That's what he said all the time. He said he's an accountant and a taxman. So,
did he understand risk?
Did he understand risk? I'm not too sure. But his ship was listing. From where I sit, his ship was listing. Yes. I said the economy was broken. His ship was listing. Ship was listing. So if the ship is like this, it was half in water.
Is there anything about Ken, since you know him, is there anything about him that you would want him to change as he's about to manage the economy?
I mean, I know Ken, but he's an acquaintance, well, maybe acquaintance plus, but I know Ken. Ken should do what he knows best, and I wouldn't want to advise Ken because he knows what to do. I mean, he's not stupid. He can't be stupid. Ken can't be, Ken cannot be worse than what we've had before. He can't be. It's not possible.
Can't be worse than Tekpe?
He cannot be worse than.
Why do you say so?
Well, because I think that when I say worse than Tekpe, assuming I give Honorable Tekpe 100, so I assume I've given him 100. Because at least on paper, you can only judge the person by what they will do, but you use what they've done in the past as a guide. At least from that angle, he should be able to do better, if nothing at all. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Exactly.
And it will take us, and of course, who knows the future? I don't know. Do you know the future? I don't know. Do you know? But I am saying that at least from what he's done in the past, he can't be worse than Honorable Safumafo, who was also finance minister. He can't be worse than Honorable Dufo was worse. He can't be worse than them. It's not possible. If Ken even went to the office 3 days a week, he should be able to do the job. I mean, really, why shouldn't he be able to do it?
You seem to have a lot of faith in it. If you were Ken Ofori-Atta, what would you do to make sure this economy grows and people can feel it in their pockets?
Okay. I mean, we have a situation where we can do 3 things. We increase income, or we cut expenditure, or do both. We have a productive sector that is gone. And what will revive the productive sector is agriculture. We need to push our resources in agriculture. We need to manage public expenditure very carefully. And here, the ministers have to lead by example, because there'll be some sacrifices that have to be made. Maybe in the end, we'll have to pay higher taxes. Maybe in the end, we'll not be able to pay the public servants as much as they deserve or they want. But it needs to be managed. But the ministers, they have to lead by example, by what they do and how they conduct themselves. Because, you see, unless we do that, unless the politicians do that, it's very difficult for them to ask the public servants to do anything else. So that's all he's got to do. Increase income, cut expenditure, or do both. What else is he going to do? That's all you got to do.
How is he going to increase income?
Well, in the short, you've got to invest in the productive sector, because first, you increase income, you've got to widen that tax net. You've got to make it easy for people to pay tax. People, maybe some cocoa seller wants to go and pay tax, he has to go and queue. I mean, really, he's not going to pay. You've got to be able to make it possible for the cocoa seller to pay tax by using mobile money. You know, so you've got to widen the tax net. I mean, I've said that even if you said that anybody registering a vehicle over, say, 10,000 cedis, say, you should show a tax clearance certificate, I can assure you that the tax income of this country will double. It will double, because I think it will catch a lot of people. We have a law that requires that if you're registering property, you show a tax clearance certificate. It's not enforced. That can be done. So there are things that you can do to widen the tax net. You've got to do that. Then it's got to find ways to cut expenditure. You know, and I'm sure there are ways to cut expenditure. Capacity building, you know, the capacity building. You know, when I did my, when I looked at the budget last year, in 2015, yeah, they spent about 136 million on capacity building and about 30 million on agric. But what's capacity building?
Tell me, what's capacity building?
Well, training, flying back and forth, all those things, capacity building. Capacity building. When your productive sector is dead, you know, we've got to make choices. So there are things that he can do. So increase income, cut expenditure, do both. What else are you going to do? And invest.
Talking about cutting expenditure, so far, we have about 36, we have 36 ministers. And already there are others who are, some who are complaining. Do you have a problem with the number of ministers we have?
You know, I've been listening to the arguments, and I mean, there are different sides to it. People say it's too many. The president says, I need them to be able to execute my agenda. He says, I'll pay for them through my presidential budget. I mean, to that, what I would say is that, you know, I mean, we can only trust what he's saying if he tells us what the budget was last and what it's going to be now and what the difference
exactly
is.
the point.
Exactly.
So he can still increase his budget
exactly.
and
exactly.
use that to pay them.
But when I think about how I run my business, the first thing you don't think about is not how much it's going to cost me. The first thing you think about is what do I need to do to execute and achieve a certain objective? And that should be the driver. Where I will be held accountable is if I failed in execution. So I think the cost, yes, but if they're able to show us, and that's where, you know, that's one of the things I've been talking about, trust and transparency. They should tell us what these people are supposed to do. They should tell us how they're supposed to, I mean, by which time they're supposed to do it. They should tell us how we'll know that they've been successful. Then everybody, you know, we know that, okay, this government at least is thinking about the citizens. But in any case, it's not the issue that failure is not the issue. Some of them will fail, and you don't learn unless you fail. But we need to know that our money has been spent wisely, and that's all we're asking for. So, although they are 36, if they're able to achieve a certain objective, then that's fine. Because if you're going to put cost, for example, I spend maybe $200,000 on some software, that will bring cost, that will bring benefit in the long run. But I can't say $200,000 is a lot of money. You understand what I mean? That's how you got to be thinking.
Yes, but do you need new ministries to be able to achieve everything that you want to do?
Look, managing a ministry and all the things that go with it is a huge job. And so if, for example, railways, if, for example, at the end of 4 years, we're able to show that we built railways and it's working, blah, 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 then it justifies it. If special initiatives, whatever special initiative is, you know, it's supposed to...
You don't even know, we don't even know what the special initiatives
they haven't told me. Have they told me? They
haven't told any of us, but there's one for it, and that's actually the point.
No, but,
you know, there's a minister in charge of special initiatives. What those initiatives are, we don't even know.
Yes, so I'm hoping that in the spirit of transparency, they're going to come out and tell us what those people are supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it by, and how we'll know that they're successful. It's not the fact that we are afraid of failure, because unless if you're afraid of failure, you not achieve anything. but we want to know that our resources have been allocated properly. So they need to come out and tell us what they're supposed to do. And we're happy. But this hanging in the balance and saying, well, trust me, I know what I'm doing, it doesn't work for us. It's our money. It's our money. And we are citizens, not spectators.
So you have a challenge, some sort of?
Yes and no. I have a challenge because I don't know what they're supposed to achieve. No, because I know that, to really execute a project is a huge task. And if you're not careful and lump it all under one person, it could be difficult.
Yes, but the other point also is that you have, for instance, look at the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, split into two. Okay, so you have a Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation. Now, the new Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation would come with its own set of employees. Okay, you would have to look at, for instance, you need a new director for that particular ministry. You need other people to go in. Of course, you can take some from the old ministry, but you'll be employing new people to go in there. That's at an extra cost to the state.
I agree, but it depends on whether they achieve the objectives. And in resourcing to execute a project or whatever you want to do, cost is an issue, but cost should not be the deal breaker. It depends on what you want to achieve. And that's how you got to look at it.
Yes, but it also depends on how much money you have.
Well, that's always a limiting factor. How much money you have is always a limiting factor. So, for example, I want my turnover to be 25 billion next year. But of course, my market is only 11 billion. So it's always, that's always a limiting factor. But if you think that there's certain things you know to do that are important, you do a budget, then you prioritize. You've got to make, things have to give. I mean, strategy is deciding the things that you will not do. So you can't do everything. So I'm hoping that Honorable President, after having been in opposition for, having been active in politics for over the last, how many years? At least 40.
40 years.
At least 50. I mean, he's had 50 years to think about what he's going to do. So let's hope that when he comes out to tell us what they're going to do, it's actually on point. I mean, 50 years is a long time.
Because if you're talking about, the bit about special initiatives. Okay, so you have a minister in charge of inner city and Zongo development.
I'm saying that you're jumping the gun.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
That's one of the, if I could say, one of the promises, yes. And then you have a minister in charge of regional reorganization. This is something that can be done without, for having a minister.
Another problem probably he had was that it will be, you could say, ask you or me to go and be responsible for Zongo, whatever it is. And, he's limited by Parliament. He's required to get a certain percentage of his people from Parliament, his staff. But if you call a parliamentarian and say, come and be a presidential staffer, he's going to say, man, but you are demoting me also. So there are certain considerations. He should let us know. After 50 years, he's very clear in his mind what he's supposed to do. 50 years is a long time. Let him come out and tell us clearly what these people are supposed to do and what he expects them to do and what is measurable. And then at the end of the period, we'll hold them accountable. That's all. But let's not, the cost worries me. But I think that we're using the cost, and the cost is making us forget that, the objective probably is more important. You see what I mean? So let them come out and tell us what they're going to be doing.
Because there are others who also argue that this would create more bureaucracy.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because if, for example, take Delex Finance. If I have somebody, one of my general managers, I have maybe 4 general managers, and one's responsible for IT, one's responsible for maybe credit risk, blah, blah, blah. It creates less bureaucracy because they can take decisions, they have the authority to take decisions at a higher level before it comes to me. But if everything was rerouted to me, it becomes bureaucratic because you have to go, it comes to me, I have to check, I don't have anybody to filter it. So, not necessarily.
But, for instance, in a situation where you have, say, a minister in charge of inner city and Zongo development, then you have somebody in charge of the Zongo Development Fund who is accountable to that minister. The minister is also accountable to Parliament and by extension the President. So even when it gets to decision making, it gets to a point where you have a long chain in here.
Let's not worry about that. What I'll say is that first, we don't want government in any business. We don't want government in any business. They should sit there, make policies, monitor, blah, blah. Government should not be involved in any business. For me, that's critical. And then they should tell us what they're expecting these people, these ministers to do, what they're supposed to do, how much it's costing us, and then they should let us know what they achieved at the end of the period. Full stop. I mean, for me, that's my only issue. But 50 years is a long time. He should know what he's doing.
Of the ministers, anybody you weren't expecting to be there?
I had no expectations, actually. I had no expectations. I had no expectations. You know, when it comes to ministerial appointments, you know, a lot of things come into play. When you go to I passed by the president's house, you know, I think a couple of days after, the concession, it was like a agbuglushi. But maybe people are happy to see him, people are lobbying. So the most important thing is that we trust that he'll make the right decisions. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. At least on paper, it's fine. But we shall see.
On paper, they're all fine, all the ministers?
On paper, they're fine. On paper, look, it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. And there's nothing we want to do that's not been done before. What we need is leadership, or we need somebody who's firm, or we need somebody who's focused, and we want somebody who will be held accountable for what they do. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. I mean, we haven't asked anybody to build a satellite to take cocoa beans to Mars, have we? It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science.
But if you were the one appointing these ministers, for instance, I asked you that question, I'd ask you again. Is there anybody in now that you wouldn't have put there?
Honestly, I don't even know them.
You don't know them?
I don't know them. But do I need to know them? I don't need to know them. I mean,
Ghana, you need to know those who are working for them.
Ghana is 25. Well, now they've brought their bios, so I look at them and say, okay, maybe it looks good. But Ghana is 25 million people. How many people do I know? I don't know them. I know Ken. I've seen a few other people. I mean, I know them, you know, I can recognize them, but I don't know them. But I don't need to know them. It's not my responsibility to know the ministers. My responsibility is to be a citizen, and all I'm interested in is jobs and my pocket. That's it. That's all I'm interested in. Because you see, if your real income grows, you patronize my services. That's what I'm interested in.
You're just interested in us, you know, you feeling everything in your pocket.
But that's what I'm interested in.
And that's all.
I don't care about the rest. I care, you know, and I'll feel it in my pocket, you know. If by the time I'm feeling in my pocket, I know that less people are dying.
But I believe you're feeling it in your pocket already, you personally.
Ken Thompson.
Yes, aren't you feeling it in your pocket?
Yeah, I'm sure I am. I tell you, I wish I could double my salary tomorrow. You know,
you want to double your salary?
I wish I could. It's a tough world, you know. And one of the things that I found frustrating over the last few years is, you know, as a Ghanaian, you know, I've lost confidence. You know, I've lost confidence. I live in filth. I live in absolute filth. The schools are run down. You know, and I'm thinking, but what is going on? I mean, as a person, I've lost confidence as a Ghanaian. It's terrible. Any two-bit foreigner thinks they can give you advice. Oh, but you should be doing this something. Yeah, right. You know, don't come and ask me about Ghana. You talk about my company. I can tell you what I'm doing. So, in my pocket, no. You're not feeling it. Do you feel it in your pocket? You know, I came into the studio this morning and...
I wouldn't answer that.
I rather I don't. And one of your crew told me a very sad story, which I'll repeat. But I thought, it makes me feel so sad. It makes me feel sad because I know that unless the majority is empowered and feeling their pocket, my future is not secure. It makes me so sad. And the things we want to do is not rocket science. It can't be rocket science. It's not rocket science. You know, maybe I can't do the ministerial. Maybe if they gave me a minister, I would fail. I don't know. But what they have to do is not rocket science.
Finally, do you have belief in this government to deliver?
I think that this government, if I look at where they're coming from historically, if I look at some of the people in the party and the things that they've said, it's probably the last generation which knows what good looks like. You know, if you don't know what good looks like, you can't produce good. And they have some perspective on what Ghana used to be like, what it can be, the potential it has. And it's probably our last chance to become who we think we should be. I mean, there'll be sacrifices. It will be painful. They need to be transparent. They need us. They need to get us to trust us. A lot will depend on how they conduct themselves. But if they fail, we're in some serious trouble.
Do you have belief in them?
I do. I mean, my head says 50-50. My heart says believe in them. My head says 50-50 because I'm an entrepreneur. I've seen success and failure. So my head says maybe, but I'm hedging. Okay, let's say my head says 60-40. 60 they'll do well, 40 they may fail. My heart is all for them because, you know, I want to feel proud to be a Ghanaian. I need to feel proud to be a Ghanaian.
Ken Thompson, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're very grateful to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so you heard from CEO of Dalex Finance, Ken Thompson, joining us this afternoon on Hot Issues right here on TV3. Thank you so much for watching. I am Winston, and I'll see you same time next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.